Right, let's do the ENCE discussion then. Because one of the problems with the ENCE topic for me is this. It's like I said earlier, to me, they model so much like Heroic when they were on top. It's like all the reasons, like if you notice, it's even why the credit seems to funnel all the way to the IGL and the coach, which is the same thing we did with Heroic. Like it all went to Cadian. Because when you look at them as a team, if we're talking about like proper Counter, they're playing brilliant Counter-Strike. This is fabulous. Like it's the same reason why I told people on paper I wanted Heroic to win the Blast Major, because what I wanted, like I said with that lens before, is if someone came to me as a brand new fan of CS2 and they were like, what was CSGO like? I could just tell them, bro, just go watch the major final. Well, see that team Heroic that won? That's how Counter-Strike was played. Like that was like the best level it got to, where they had all the, the utility usage, the rotations, they understood all the trading, they had the map pool, they could win on both sides. The IGL was a great caller, but he could also sort of call from spawn or call and rotate. Everything was there. Loads of these factors are there for ENCE. Like there's so many there I can compliment. Their checklist looks awesome. The problem is, I'm going to spin it from the opposite way. This is a team now where if we only look at what's good about them, they're great. You can make an argument they're number one. They look like, just like Heroic, they also look now, I mean, Heroic, the joke is Heroic's dropped off from this, but they've become the new Heroic. They also have the craziest flaw. Like, they feel like a lock to make every semi. In fact, they even do beat the teams that beat them in the final, as long as it's not the final. If you play them in the quarters or something. Like, the joke is they've already beaten Vitality. Like, we know they can. We know they can beat G2. They can beat all these teams. It's that same thing. But there's clearly something happening when they reach these big finals. Like, every time in these finals, like, I think, just like Heroic, this is significant to me. It's one thing if you reach 4 finals, but you're the underdog every time. Then maybe you shouldn't win any of them. Dude, they looked so good coming to some of these finals. Actually, to only have one title out of it is a bit underwhelming to me. They could have won for real, all of them. They could have won 2 or 3. They could have won this one. They could have won the Cologne. These were all right there for the taking for my money. The problem is, though, if we get into some of the specifics of why they didn't, they do lack the superstar player. They don't have the Ziwu guy who pulls your ass out the fire at the end of a game, or a Nico who just, in the middle of the game is just so dominant, it's already over and you steal their map. It's basically like the strengths that get them to that point. If one of them fails, if anything goes off, they become like, for me, they become like 50% as good when they face this pressure, and when they get the slow start, and then someone's like Sun Pius isn't in the game and he doesn't have his AWP. Like, there's a difference as well. Sun Pius has to have his AWP. This isn't a guy who's like, he's all right with the rifle. He's not some god with it though. Like, his game becomes a lot less, quite frankly, not as good. He's not as good, quite frankly, on T side as well. Like, there are real flaws here. So I want to see what's your temperature check on ENCE, because there's so many reasons to fall in love with them, but I do think when you have this many chances and you keep blowing it, I know people think it's early in the time to start asking, do they choke? But like, we sort of do have to ask, because to me, this is a window like now where you could have got a lot of trophies. Like, dude, we could be talking about like, is this going to be like an ENCE era if they'd have won like 3 or 4 of these titles?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's the right way to approach it, as the problems first. And then we can always pay the compliments that they deserve, because I do think they play close to the most perfect Counter-Strike we have currently. Just if you look at the strategies and the movements and the pacing, you can almost point to anyone in the game and say, look at how ENCE is playing, and that's how Counter-Strike is supposed to be. And I agree with that statement. I think that this game, this grand final against Vitality, hurts more than Cologne, for my money and what it means for ENCE. Because when we were in Cologne and we were talking about a best of 5 going up against a red hot Nico and a great Modesty, it's like, maybe the order is just too tall. Like, a best of 5, it's such an incredible, egregious battle where it's very unique to the sphere and the space of Counter-Strike. So I could imagine it was too much. This one was right there for the taking. It was right there for the taking. We're talking about an ENCE that beat Vitality at the most important event, a map pool that goes their way, which, by the way, why don't they pick Vertigo? It's there, but they could have completely done it. They go for the same maps again. That's another discussion. But yeah, I think that currently they don't have a team solid enough to withstand the tribulations that is a grand final. And right now, it needs to be a perfect scenario for them to win. And I think this was an example. You mentioned Sampaios. For my money, he's the only one currently that is starting to establish his dominance and his presence in every one of these games. Even the games against Vitality, his 1.27 rating is very decent. He's had a few moments. He's one of the only ones that is becoming a go-to, reliable star player in these moments. I love the attitude. I love the difference making. He's super sharp. He's super out there. He destroyed Ziwu in Cologne. It broke my heart. So he's getting there. But there are still some other players that need to deliver. Like Nerds, for example. I think Nerds is it sounds like it's a dig, but it's actually a compliment in the sense of we see what he can do at times. We see the magnitude that he can enter in and the kind of impact he can have. In the grand final, this wasn't the Nerds that that he could be. Quite simply, just look at how he's playing, look at how he's been playing up until there. So there are, and I think it's mainly him, if you will ask me, it's mainly Nerds who has this sort of echo chamber, so the chamber where he can very much develop in the last game of the tournament. Because I think Madden's not supposed to have incredible numbers. He's a very like role-based player who's taking space and doing the dirty work. And even then, I think his numbers are pretty good in what he's doing. Diha could do better, but I think Nerds is where the room is. That's Nerds.
Yes.
He wasn't there against Vitality. That hurt them massively. If you look at Cologne, that was a completely different story. So they're yet to conquer this grand final. And where I do join your concern is that how much is that hurting them? These grand finals that are passing by and are not winning, and how much is it actually becoming its own monster in their own heads? You know,
yes.
The whole saying of like there's a snake under the rug, and then it becomes a bigger snake, and it's like a dragon at the end that's eating the house. That's how I worry about ENCE just a little bit, because if they keep not winning while playing their best, then we're gonna have to see how they deal with it, both internally and of course like individually. That worries me a tad. And the only reason that I am not so harsh and critical over ENCE is that this grand final had a 45-minute to 1 hour technical break in the middle.
That was a nightmare, yes.
In the middle of the second map, where ENCE were technically still in a winning position after winning map 1. Look, for my money, this is, I mean, I'm an old school player, Duncan. I come from the time where we would have 1 hour break very regularly in games. So as far as I was concerned, part of being a professional was being able to reset your brain and get back into it. I think it's a skill set that you need. But I would be remiss not to mention the fact that this whole grand final took a weird turn after this break, and then Vitality were the one fully in control after this, and they smashed them. That's the only reason I'm taking a pinch of salt with that one, because I know I think it has to be considered. But other than that, yes, I think the window is slowly closing. And if you are playing good, or let me rephrase, if you're playing very good and not winning, then doubts start creeping in, and you start doubting things you shouldn't be doubting. Is it the system? Is it the strategy? Am I being put in the right position? You start imagining issues, imagining problems, and that could come creeping for ENCE, because after all, they had a few chances now to win big trophies.
Yeah, on the thing of like the pause, basically, if people don't know, it's a very famous concept in American sports where like you take a timeout to cool off the other star player, just to sort of make him think for 20 seconds, and you know, you don't just let him keep scoring baskets or whatever the particular sport is. So I will say, in general, if you do a massive tech pause like that, especially because the problem with the tech pause is it's indeterminate. No one knows when it will end. It could end in 4 seconds or it could end in 40 minutes. And in this case, it was more towards the latter than the former. The nightmare there is, one, especially if you're a casual fan, the rule is you can't talk during a tech pause. So you just sat there in your own head. It's not even like you're having a discussion. It's not like a timeout. Like, well, you know, like when we come back, do we do? No, like you just all sat there sort of waiting, and whatever internal dialogue's all you've got to keep yourself sustained for the next 40 minutes. In general, I would say as a general principle, that will always favour the more experienced team and core, because they've, like you say, they've been there, they've won the championships, they know what it's like to have this. If you're the up and coming team, the problem is, even though it sounds just like so immature and childish, you are going to have a very human reaction. Your reaction is going to be like, but I'm up a map and I've almost won map 2. That's the sort of thing where like a super pro can do the hard reset. It's why I've always said the best teams, you can't do what, even though I don't blame you because it's human nature, but I actually hate it when you guys on the desk, when map 1, someone gets obliterated and then you go like, well, if it's going to be like that, it's going to be a quick 2-0. It's like, if we're talking about the elite teams, they reset between maps. Like a new map may as well be a new day to them. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be you're going to still have to earn it against the next map. It's not really going to carry the momentum of the last map. But if you're the underdog team and you're less experienced players, in a way, you really just want it over as soon as possible. Like, you don't want to go, okay, it's okay that I was leading, but that's sort of taken away from me now. And then they came back. That's fine. You know, 1 map for the championship. It's just the 3rd one. No, in your brain, you should have won 2-0, or you almost did. And that is so insidious if you let that get into your head. It's the reason why the top pros, a lot of what those sports psychology people do, if you don't get it, guys, they're not actually doing movie stuff where they do a speech and it rouses you. It's the opposite. If anything, they're teaching you how to sort of go to a baseline and how to anchor yourself and how to understand, like, you don't don't have to like there's a saying in the occult, this will say like a weird digression. There's a saying in the occult, right, that goes that any action that you take without the lust or desire of result is the purest action you can take. Because even when you want to win the game, and that's why you're trying so hard, if you grasp too hard like that greedily, it'll go through your fingers like sand, mate. You'll lose it. In that scenario, what actually makes you win is being able to just sort of go, right, each round, what are the right moves to play? What's the right thing? Forget that we've got a lead even. How do we close this game? I mean, Nate, in a minute, we'll talk about some of the teams who blew their leads, the G2s and the Virtus Pros. Like, these are teams as well where on paper you had the game. You might have thought it was over. And actually, this is why we'll talk about these two teams. The different responses to how they tried to win or not win the game actually will haunt them later on. They won't be able to come back like I'm saying and go, we gave ourselves a good chance on all these scenarios and, tip your hat, the other team just won. No, some of them will be haunted by decisions they made on force buys or did they make a play and stuff. So to me, that's the part that's changed here. The problem with ENCE is they do feel that they are massively the team where it's like, if you cool them off like this and let them think, I've seen it in all these finals now. It's why when they get the slow start even, they're not coming back like they would, mate. A really elite team even let's take these teams like G2 and Vitality. It's hard to keep these teams down, mate. You don't just run off 10 rounds against these guys. You know what I mean? Like, eventually it's going to break. They're going to get money. They're going to get, like, someone's going to win a clutch, a big name player. They're going to switch halves. Something's going to happen that's going to reset the game. The problem for ENCE is it feels like by the time they get into some of these games, it's almost over. Like, it really has. The ship has almost sailed. It's right on the horizon and you're almost too late. And NERTZ is a big factor because I feel like we're being really unfair to NERTZ. One thing I always try to explain to people is teams have an expectation level based on the whole roster, but individual players have a different timeline. So in the same way as on the past episode, I pointed out, Huxey's expectations and timelines are actually very different to Nico's. Nico's is he has to win the major. That's it. It's the ultimate expectation. The actual expectation for Huxey is more like do a good job and win some tournaments and get in a position to win. And if you do that, you probably did your job. Like, he has a lower and different set of expectations. So similarly, for ENCE, the squad, because we all remember back when they had Hades and Spinks, they were sort of already almost in this position. They were getting really quite good, and then Spinks left, and then they kicked Hades, and they made these changes, and they're back again. We all want them now to just go, right, now just take that last step and be the best. But the problem with that is, I can't say that to NERTZ. Dude, he only joined the team in like February or something, and before that, it's not a joke, guys, he was playing on Endpoint. It wasn't like, at least Flames was on OG. This guy was playing like tier 3, essentially. Like, I can't say to that player, well, you made a few finals now, where's the 1.3 rating? Where's the MVP? It's like, it's actually totally fair to him that he's still tracking upwards. Like, to me, if he was in almost any other team, like, here's the best way to think of NERTZ. If he was on like a team that had come in the quarterfinals here, like a lesser team, you'd go, great performance, can't wait to see more from you. But now I have to say, you have to just win the tournament and be the MVP, mate. You have to, for real, we're expecting you to actually outdo Zero in this final. Not even just play well, you're supposed to actually beat that guy and take the MVP. Like, that's an incredibly high set of expectations to put on someone. And I even feel like he's being a bit fucked over because since his nationality is the same as Spinks, who was the previous rifle star, bro, he isn't Spinks yet. First of all, they have a very different style of play. They're almost the polar opposite players. One's like the entry player, one is like the lurker. And then secondly, Spinks, to me, is someone where like, he certainly had his issues fitting into Vitality, but to me, he had a much more established game. I do think NERTZ is like an incredibly, I know this is the term that people have abused in sports, but I don't. I think he's an incredibly mercurial player. He just has those games where he is outrageous and his aim's just sick, and you think, fucking hell, this is the next Nico, Spinks, accent. This is the next God Rifler. But then he also has the games, you see it sometimes in semis and finals. By the way, this is how I know ENCE is legit. In Cologne, he actually had a mad quiet semi against Vitality, but they still got through the game without him needing to do it. He can have games where he just disappears and he's just whatever. But the problem is, to go back to the whole like Zero angle, you can see his ability level, though, is higher than almost everyone on this team. Like, for me, like, I'm with you on the Sampaius one. I don't call Sampaius the best AWP. I just think he's a big game player. And I think that is a distinction we need to make. By the way, shout out since he just retired, that is what Flusher would be considered as. I never actually personally thought Flusher was better than Crimson Roloff. But I'll tell you what, if you want a big game performance in like a semi of a major, this is your guy. By the way, that's what makes it so unfair. That he's not even their best player, but he might just pop off and carry the game with like a +20 or something. Some Pius is that guy for me. Like, I don't expect him to be the Ziwu with the team and he has to carry every time. If he just gives me I'm with you. The performances he's already given in the big game, that's enough. Give me that and Spinks and Snappy and all the rest of the team, and I'm with you. It's mainly the Nerds angle I'm looking at. I'll give a slight pass though. I will give a little bit of flame to Dikar though, which is, to me, he's like the impact player on this team. If you see the way he plays, especially on T-side, sometimes he just straight entries, mate, and he just opens the game. I have noticed if he has a bad game, they also will struggle. Like, he's another one where, because I'm with you, the rest actually, Son Pius, Madden and Snappy, I don't even think they're ever playing bad in these games, mate. They still play good even in these finals. Like, they look like they're doing their job. It's why, in a way, I can be quite confident about ENCE. Like, I don't think they have to have like the superstar. They don't really need it to happen, but this is what tears me up. I can't tell if they're this close and they're going to break through next event and win and it'll all be great, or if this was the height and then now we're all going to be looking back in 3 months like, oh, what could have been? What's your sense? Like, which way do you go on that one?
So it's going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, but I think what ENCE need more than anything is not like a statement win in a grand final 16-6. They need a hard-fought battle, losing their map pick hard all the way through pushing back to win. I think they need that more than the easy win, because I think they've already established that when things are rolling, it's like, what the hell are you supposed to do? Like Snappy's calling amazingly, still probably a little bit underrated in his calling. Switch of rhythm, like switch of pace, the best that we have in the game right now. Close to Heroic, probably better than Heroic right now.
Could be.
Changing the pace incredibly. When things are firing up, you have Diha with the multi-kill, Sampaya's big game player, Nerds. Like, all of these things, that's all fine. I'm wondering about, if someone comes to me and say, hey, ENCE is playing like hell or playing like shit, then I need to know who I believe in. When ENCE is struggling, I need to know, what am I going to see from an ENCE that's struggling? And this is still something that's yet to be
So you want like, like a big comeback third map win, or like the OT victory, something like this, right? To like a character win, right?
And this is probably where I think the angle of attack against Diha takes all of its sort of like life in terms of, I've seen him take over games, but I feel like whenever the team dips, so does he.
Right.
And we would need to talk to him. We'd need to talk to his teammates. Maybe we'd get like an internal sort of observation on the whole situation. But I feel like he gets impacted by what's happening in the game. And then when you move on to map number 3, after a weird map number 2, probably a little bit frustrating, then he ends up with 11 kills. And I've seen that happen more than once. So that in itself has to be addressed, and it can't happen, basically, because a team is never as good as its weakest link in the most horrible moment. And this is how I value a team. And this is why you and I, we're making the distinction with G2 and Vitality. Because I could look at Vitality and G2 losing right now, and I know there's plenty of different assets, plenty of different cards that could pop off, and then we're right back on track. A couple of rounds being won, and then you can feel. For ENCE, we are yet to see that. We've seen them take over games. When things are going well, it's beautiful. We've even seen them in high, like stake on stake. Like the phase game on Ancient is a good example. Against Vitality, the double overtime against Heroic as well in Gamer State. Like, things are really escalating, and they can keep up with the intensity. We know they can do that. The last page is being able to come back from a horrible situation where things are going against you and nothing is working and you're missing all your shots, and then see them come back from this. Because once they do it and they start having an actual feeling, like an intrinsical feeling that they can do it, this is going to be the next level. For as long as they don't have it, they're going to be an easy team to discard in the last match, because you're thinking there are too many scenarios in which things will go to hell and they cannot come back. Yes. And the truth is, at the level that Counter-Strike is right now, it is very unlikely that you're going to play a grand final or a semi-final and things are going to go only well for you. That's just the way the game is. And I need to be able to bet on them when things are going to hell, which I am not quite there yet. And that's what I think they need. I think they need a hard-fought win where they suffer and sweat and it looks like they're going to mess it up and the comeback is against them. And I think this is what they would need more than anything, to prove to themselves that they can do it even when things don't go their way. The way we always say, a team is supposed to win with their B play.
Yes,
not even
exactly.
their A game. When you're able to do that, that's it. You're going to start establishing yourself as a title winner and you're going to be out there racking up titles. That's a step that I think is yet to be taken by ENCE.
Yeah, as well as the idea, like you said earlier, like they probably are at this point in their own heads about these finals and the big pressure games, because everyone, like, it's not like they're oblivious to the fact they're losing these guys and that they could have won them, or that it's an opponent they've beaten before. But the other angle as well to factor in is, when you do that enough times, it also gets into your opponent's head. Like, if I'm a G2 or a Vitality and I play ENCE tomorrow in a big match, here's what I'm thinking if they win map 1. just hold in there. If we can just hold in there and somehow get it to a map 3, they're going to give us a chance. There's going to be a moment where it'll go bad for them. They'll start slow. Someone will miss a kill. Someone won't get their weapon. They're going to give us the opportunity, which is, by the way, what happened to all the chalk teams in history, the old Astralis, etc. I can tell you, those NIP and Virtus Pro guys behind the scenes used to laugh before Astralis overcame that and won and go like, bro, we love playing these guys because we know even if they come out of the gate super hot, can they maintain it? Can they really just 2-0s and 16 to us? Probably not. They're probably going to give us a chance in the game. We're probably going to go to our map and eke out a win. And if we just do, all we have to do is survive, and then they'll just give us a chance to win the game. And that's what they're thinking. And unfortunately, when the opponent knows that, it's like you're saying about winning like a big like statement game. Until you do that, until you sort of go into the fire of like the big game like that, like, by the way, the G2s and the Vitalities had in this tournament run, until you have that, you're not really going to truly win their respect. Like, they'll say you're one of the best teams too, but they also know in the back of their mind, like, we're supposed to beat you. No matter what the rankings say, no matter what your semi-final, we're supposed to win this one. So that is a concern for me, but it's understandable though. Remember, ENCE wasn't even supposed to be in this position.
No.
There's another factor I'll throw in is, I actually think the reason why it's very interesting, I'll say the next 3 to 6 months for ENCE, is because finally they have a true window to keep these 5 players and at least go for this Maniac. Because this is actually a mega positive for them. Is that if you look at the other teams, the 3 orgs most likely to steal their players, if you wanted to take a Snappy, a Nertz, a Sunpires, would be Vitality, G2 and FaZe, just based on like the international rosters, the draw of the thing, the salary. None of these teams in theory are going to take those players right now. G2 and Vitality are sticking, so they're already set. FaZe doesn't look like they want to make a swap and especially not do a gamble. So right now, you're at least going to get a crack at it. You're at least going to get to actually play the tournaments, because the bomber obviously would be to have what happened with Spinks, which is like if Nertz does get it together, then it's like, well, bon voyage, it was nice seeing you. Hope we can find the next one, because that can't last forever. So to me, they do have a window for this finally. Like, I don't think if I look at it, there's a reason why one of their players should be taken now, etc. And that the reason why this is big is, look, I won't oversell it. This isn't like 3 years ago. ENCE isn't really paying pennies. Like, as far as I know as well, as the team's gotten better over the last couple of years, they've used the sticker money, etc., to like pump the salaries up, and they've got like way more competitive salaries. But they, to some degree, I have to give them credit in the sense that they are like a Heroic when Heroic first hit the top. These were the teams working on a way smaller budget. It's not just the players you can even get. It's even the players you have, you're paying a smaller salary. Like, if people don't know, back in 2020, when that Heroic team first hit number 1 online, I think off the top of my head, when I'd looked into it, they were paying like 7.5k a month salary or something. This is when FaZe used to pay 25k to come like 4 places below in the tournament, you know. Like, if you can do that on a budget, that is incredible. So to me, this is your window right now. If you do this right, you can actually, you don't have to even be number 1 and win all the titles. You just have to win some titles. If you can just win this one and then you lose that one, you win the next one, you lose a semi here, but you win a final. Like, basically, if you can be a true contender for the next major, I know it's a long time away now, which is unfortunate, but
I know,
if you can be in that position, then this could be a really special project. Because I do think, like I said, to come all the way back to the beginning, on the upside, mate, the way they actually play the game, though, is mesmerising, mate. This is why I get why people are making the argument. I'd probably have to side with them myself. Maybe Snappy just is the best IGL, mate. I gave the same props to Cadian when Heroic was at their absolute best. Like, you can tell this isn't just people shooting people. There's real thought behind this, and the way they play off. I also think another thing like Heroic that I've got to give props, the way they play with each other, it's so impressive. Like, these people don't understand, when you have big name players, it's tough to get them to actually play like proper Counter-Strike. A lot of them are in their own little world of how am I going to get my kill, or what are you going to do to get me into this position.
Yep.
The way this team plays is beautiful. Like, you can tell this is a team where you would love to play in a squad like this, mate.
No, I agree with you. And I think Heroic and ENCE have so many similarities in sense of having an identity and a philosophy and sticking to it and just buying into it. And this is the Counter-Strike that we play. It doesn't matter if it requires me to sacrifice myself for this round. This is what we need to do, and it's going to work out. That's the pluses. The minuses, unfortunately, is that when you put them and you compare them to the likes of G2 or Vitality, is that for these teams, you have at times players who just take over the round. I'm not talking about a game. I'm talking about a round. And in a moment where the blueprint, the plan of the map is just not navigating you to the win. It's just not going to happen. You can't anymore. Whatever it is that you wanted to do, it just doesn't work anymore. You're going to need someone to have an individual move that's going to make a difference. And this is where big teams like G2 and Vitality maybe have a deeper, I guess, gear that they can activate in terms of individual. I also wanted to say, I think it's a good argument you're making about whether or not this team is going to stick together, because currently they might be safe. But I'm going to make a point that I'm going to have to take, that this security isn't going to last too long.
Okay.
If they struggle to actually find the success that they probably now all believe that they should have because of the improvement that they've gone through, because of the performance that they've had. The more time passes, and if disappointments pile up, they're going to become vulnerable to the interest of other teams out there. And maybe now is not the most competitive knit-tight moment where everyone is looking to grab the next new player. But if you're a team and your AWPer is struggling a little bit, some bias is right there. If you want to bet on the future, Nerd seems like a safe bet. I don't think any of them would answer the call of FaZe today. I don't think they would. But if we fast forward in 6 months and what we're talking about has happened 5 more times.
If they don't win the titles, yes.
And they start themselves doubting that they are going to take that next step, then I think it's going to get real dangerous. So I think they're safe right now as a team. And I really hope that all of these players are still fully buying into the system and really committed towards each other. And they're going to try to together make that step. That's the romantic in me that hopes that happens. But if it doesn't, man, the Sharks are going to come circling in.
Yes.
And you have a Brokey that is starting to be a little bit fading in FaZe. We don't really know what's going to happen. Hey, is maybe Rain? Should we look for a replacement right now? Hey, these are the players that people are going to come knocking at the door of. Like, Flames was snatched by Vitality. There's other players out there. Nerds, Sampires, I think. If you have an unlimited checkbook, maybe that's where you're going for the future.
Yeah, that's also the other thing I would say that is how you know that this isn't a team ENCE that's loaded with like superstar talents is this is why like Heroic to me they're so legit. Every time they win a map, it's like I know I can download that demo and it's going to make perfect sense how they won. They might have the odd round where someone won a 1v2 or got a flocky kill, but like what is like their imprint is going to make sense. The way they actually like trade is going to make sense. The utility user. The difference is when I look at G2, the reason why everyone wonders how can they win events and you love Nico, but then you think G2's not that good because people like Nico and Monacy just steal your maps every now and then. Like the amount of times I've seen G2 just like win on like some bullshit like Anubis, and it's like I don't even think they know how to play that map that well, mate. But when you have players like this, they can just rob a map for you out of nowhere. Teams like ENCE aren't doing that. They're not like tripping over and winning a map accidentally. Like that's not even in their playbook, as it were. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.